March 1st live broadcast. And again, it's a not so live. This will air March the 1st, 2024. And this day finds me in California at the Empty Spool Seminar, where I am teaching at the Asilomar Conference Center. I'm teaching the Wendy Williams pattern Full Circle. It's a great pattern. I enjoyed making it. I've got more than 20 students who are going to spend 5.5 days with me. We're going to have a great time. They're going to learn a lot. And that's where I am physically on March the 1st. So that means I can't be with you, but I have pre-recorded this so I can give you the information that you need for Pick a Petal, the month 3, block 2 block that is part of our Jen Kingwell Pick a Petal block of the month pattern. That's a mouthful. So let me get started and show you the various things that I want to show you about Pick a Petal. I've got some tips for how the original block that Jen provides, how you can make it, whether you want to do it by hand, as she does all of hers by hand, or some machine piecing. I actually did mine some of each. Or then I'm going to offer a completely alternative block if you want something that's much easier to sew and resembles the original block. And it's entirely up to you. If you just want to follow the pattern, by all means, that's perfectly fine. I encourage you to do that. If you want to try something else and expand your skills a little bit, try that too. So I'm going to switch now to the document camera so you can see the things that I want to show you. My blog that I do each month also has a lot of these words and pictures if you prefer to read them smaller, to take your time and read it and see the different pictures that are there. So that's on my blog that posted here very recently, and you can find it easily just as well. Plus, we have links to it on our website, on the Quilt Show website. So, okay, let's go to document camera. Okay, so this is the block that is what Jen calls month 2 block. And this one is an interesting block, and I could not find it in any of the Barbara Brackman pages. I went through every single block, every page in her book, looking for this one, and I couldn't find it. It has curves. It has, of course, the petals on here. It's got some straight lines, and it's just a really interesting block, and I like very much how it supplements and adds to the actual quilt design. But I did find that it wasn't real fast to machine piece, although that's my preferred method to do it. I made one completely by hand and didn't find that really was my best method. So then I made one partially by machine and by hand, and that would be this one. This is one of those that I made. So these curves are fairly gentle. This is a square, so these are straight lines. This is a slight curve. This is a little bit more of a curve. And then if you're going to actually piece this in, the petal also is a pretty good curve. So what I found that I was able to do is that this curve, this first one, was not too difficult to piece. So you will be using the templates for these, and you'll either use the acrylic templates if you have them, or you'll make your own. And we talked in last month's live about the great show that we have on the Quilt Show, Sally Collins show, number 1602. She has excellent instructions for how you can make your own templates. And so that's something I would encourage you to take a look at if you're making your own templates. So this one is a fairly gentle curve. I have all the dots marked that you see on the templates here with the little holes where you put your little dots in there. And I always mark center piece and then my 2 corners. So this one would have come out over here on this side, and I'd put a pin. Again, it's great that they have these little chopped off corners because that means that everything aligns just right and you know that you have pieces lined up just right. And the same thing with this one, putting this one on this side. So, and of course he came unpinned. But that's how I get these done for machine piecing. Well, one of the tips that I learned in Jen's show, which we have up for everybody to watch, is how you can give yourself a line if you want a sewing line. And for beginning people with hand piecing, I find that a sewing line is really helpful. And so she showed how to use these templates to draw the sewing line rather than just guess that you've connected the dots and that you've added this 1/4 inch. And I thought this was really interesting. So this is the template for the I piece on the bottom, and this is the template for this J piece that's on the top. If we want to add this line, the line that you're going to be getting is the one for the piece that this shape touches, and that's this one. So what she shows you how to do is to take the piece that matches. So obviously here, if you see these two, this is J and this is I. And I watched her show a couple times. I kept recording this, replaying it to make sure I understood how she was showing to do it. And I finally figured out that if I want to put the lines on this shape, I want to use the markings on this shape. Okay. So the first thing to know is that you can't just lay it here with this. She calls it the etched line. That's that finish line. Can't just lay it there and wing the whole thing all the way across, because this outer line could be longer than the inner line. And there are places when we do the upper one that's the case. So the first thing I just made sure that I did when I put these together is I put the etched line on the raw edge of the fabric, and I was certain that I had the dot visible. There's my little black dot, and there's a little black dot right there. And then I drew that line with a pencil. And then I moved the little template, just gave it a little bit of a move, and did the same thing again. I want the raw edges aligned, and I want the dots just aligned. Okay, and that is a quick way to actually hand draw in the line if you're going to hand piece. And I do find that very helpful for hand piecing, to actually have the line. As she mentioned on the show, you don't need a line on the bottom as well. You're going to be holding it so that this piece, the curvy piece, it's the concave piece, I call it the innie piece, you're going to be using it. And so it's just a matter of aligning. I would use 3 pins to start this here, and then I could sew directly on the pencil line. Let me show you that again for this other shape. Okay? Because once we get this shape done, and I machine piece this. And the nice thing to know about this shape is you don't have to do dot to dot sewing if it's just a regular straight line. Now, people who hand piece almost always do all dot to dot sewing, and that's perfectly fine. They have knots at the dots, and so that the seam allowances are always left open, and then you can put them wherever you want them. But for machine piecing, it's easier and faster to just go from outside edge to outside edge. So I did not have to do dot to dot here. But once I get 4 of these made, then I'm going to want to sew this curve into here. And if I want to have drawn on this piece, which is going to be on the top, okay, again, if I want this drawn line, I'm going to use the template for the piece that joins it, and that is this one. So no, it is this one. Okay, so this is what I was showing just a minute ago, and I showed pictures of this on the blog that I wrote. Same thing, and you can see here that if I tried to put this entire template here and keeping the raw edge even, I'm not going to make it right over here. It's too far out because this outer curve is a little bit deeper than the inner curve. But I can go from half to half. So I've got this first curve, I've got the etched lines on the raw edge, and I have the dot, and I just used my pencil and drew that line from the center out. And then I came and did the other side from the center out. And that's how I got the drawn line here. So if you're going to be hand piecing, then that's a great way to have this drawn line. And this is going to be the shape that's on top, that concave, the innie part is going to be on top. And I would pin here and these 2 pins, and I would hand piece. You could machine, in fact, I did machine piece this. You just decide which is the fastest method for you. Do you want to hand piece it or do you want to machine piece it? If you're sitting at home and you have your machine, that's a good time. If you're traveling, it might be better to hand piece. Okay, the other thing I want to show again is I have found that it's very helpful, and for me required, that I have extra fabric beyond this. This is a very narrow little amount of fabric. Finished here is 1/4 of an inch from this dot to this, where would be the outside edge of the block once it's sewn into the quilt. And then this 1/4 inch seam allowance added onto here. I have added a good bit more, easily, you can see just a half an inch at least more. And I have learned that it's better for me to have extra on the outside edges too. So I cut the 4 of these like this with additional fabric. the next thing to show you is something that I learned off the forum because it's great. There's so much great information and people share on the forum. One of our star members who has taken a lot of Jen Kingwell classes and projects she has done is named Sonia. And she put some pictures up when we first started talking about this, I think actually even in December, when we first started talking about these different blocks. And so what she showed to do, and because it's a way that a similar block in a different Jen Kingwell quilt was made, is that she has recommended, or the way she was going to do it, is we're making 4 of these, and then you're going to take 2, and once you've made the 4 of these, you also do this curve where it attaches to the background, just like this is done. Okay, so I have 4 of these. Then take 2 of them and join them to the center square. Now the center square is going to be a place where I do dot-to-dot sewing, because that way when I go and inset the petal, I can put the seam allowances the way they need to go. I can move them around. So I did do, but with back stitching, because it was machine stitching, I back stitched there dot to dot. So the seam allowance is open here on this piece. So what she showed us to do, and I thought this was really great, and I did it when I was working on one of these blocks. The first time I just did it according to the way Jen's instructions were. And then the next time I said, well, let me see how Sonia's method works. So again, I would have these here, and all these units are attached to the pink background. And then when and this is connected. All right, so I have this kind of funny hourglass middle, and then these 2 shapes that are going to go in the side. And if you are going to be actually piecing in the petals, and I hand pieced in the petals, then I am going to put a petal here, and a petal here, and a petal here, and a petal here. And then I've got this nice long curve, and it's probably hard for you to see the whole thing. It starts up here, comes all the way down to the bottom, and then this long curve to join this side. Jen's instructions have you put all of these together, including the pieces onto the center and adding the petals. So it doesn't matter. They all have to get added, and so you decide which way you want to do them that makes the most sense for you. So that will give you a finished block, because I have used extra fabric. And here's one that is ready to be up. This is one that is, here's what I was just talking about. I knew I had a step out that shows this. Okay, so here is this half or 2/3 of it ready to go. I have sewn this side in here to the middle, and then the piece that's left is this, and it has to be sewn along in there. And I have to check to see, I hand pieced it. I wondered which way I did it. So I hand pieced this, and I just found that to be easy for me. And so again, I would have worked with it with the concave part on the top side. So that gets that done, and then that's ready. And once it gets all finished, then it would be ready to be trimmed to perfection, which is where I need to make it 8.5 inches, because I have the extra fabric on the outside edge. So in the same way that I showed last month how you would trim the block 1, you're going to do the same thing with block 2. So that's one idea. Let me check and make sure that I've covered everything that I wanted to. And yeah, okay. So then I thought, well, ever since I saw this particular quilt, I wanted to see if I couldn't come up with an alternative block that was faster to machine piece. And I looked through Barbara Brackman's entire encyclopedia, looking and looking and looking to try to find a block that I liked, that kept the integrity of the design. It seemed to work, and I couldn't. So I machine pieced the first one, not very well, and I hand pieced the next one a little better. But I did find it very, very slow going for me. Well, on the forum, again, I think back in December when we first started talking about these different blocks, Helen W., who posts a good bit on the forum, had played around with Electric Quilt, her design software, and came up with this design where it is a very similar look to the original, but instead of curves here, she has straight lines. And I thought, okay, that might just be the thing. So Helen sent me her sketch that she had done, so I didn't have to redraw the whole thing in Electric Quilt. Thank you, Helen. That was great. And then I set about figuring out how I could make this the fastest way possible for me. So that's what I'm going to show you now. Right. Every bit of these instructions, these numbers that I'm going to give you, are in the blog post that is for month 3, which you can easily find. Okay, let me just move this stuff out of the way. So we have okay, so what I started with is I made strip sets, and that's what these are. Okay. I've got this lime green is the outside border fabric, which was pink in this particular exhibit, that block. And then I have 2 strips of this fabric that is there for the next 2 rounds, and I'm going to have a middle square. And then, of course, 4 petals. So, as I said, the blog has the sizes. When I say the sizes off the top of my head, I always get them wrong. So I don't want to do that. But I just made strip sets, and there are 4 of those. And I've staggered them to save fabric. So this piece does not have to be as long as this one. If it were, once I cut this at a 45-degree angle, I'm going to throw away a lot more fabric. So the measurements are in the blog, and it shows you exactly how to do this. I lined them up, and then I sewed them together like this as a strip set. Now the pressing, I've got a really good tip about pressing, because that's, you figure out what doesn't work the first time you do it, and it doesn't work. So I want to press 2 of these strip sets away from the center and 2 of these strip sets toward the center. And that way, when I go and sew them together, they will nest to each other. When I'm ultimately going to sew the mitered seam like this, you see these go out and these go in. So that's the best way to do that. 2 that go in, 2 that go out, and then align them that way. All right, so how do we get that accurate 45-degree line? Well, I got a tip for that. Right? So I take the strip set and I fold it in half and press it. And you want to make sure that you've got these edges aligned. This bottom one was a little longer, that's fine. This bottom one was a little, that's fine. As long as this top one is the right size, you're in good shape. Now I'm going to use my permanent pen so that I have a dot I can see and a dot that you can see. This is the folded edge right here. I want a dot that is exactly 1 inch in from the folded edge. And that's because the center square that goes in the middle is a 2-inch finished center square. So I simply take a good ruler that I know is accurate. I lay the 1-inch line on right at the fold, and I'm going to use my mechanical pencil to make a dot at the 1/4 inch line, dot right where 1/4 inch meets the edge, right there. Okay, and then I'm ready to cut this. Now you want to really hold on to it good and tight and get it just right so that it doesn't move on you. A 1/2 square triangle ruler is the secret to making this work just right. This is a Creative Grids ruler. It's got good grippies on the back and it works really well. There's a Quilter Select one. I've got this Quilter Select one as well. Got the same kind of idea here. So use the one that you have that works and gives you the color that you need. I'm going to use the clear one for now. I think you can see it a little better. What I want to do is, because that dot is at the finished mark, I need to cut beyond the finished line. And this ruler has this great 45-degree line that's 1/4 of an inch in from the outside edge. So by putting the edge of the ruler at the fold and the dot exactly at the crosshairs where this diagonal line meets the straight 1/4 inch line, I'm ready to make the cut. And I would simply use my rotary cutter and cut this way. I'm not going to do it now because I'd have to stand up to do it, and I don't want to mess this up because this is ultimately going to be a block. I'm going to cut that, both layers, and you really have to push hard when you get to these intersections where all the seam allowances are. When you get that done, it looks like this. So you're cutting both edges at once. The next thing that I found helpful is I took the template that is for the little square, little M. Can't actually pick it up. Oh, come on. All right. And again, with my marking pencil, I've got the 1 dot I've already added. I'm going to put this ruler right on here, and I'm going to add the 2nd dot on this side so that I can do dot-to-dot sewing. Okay. So I get all 4 of those cut, and then I'm ready to join them to the center. And that looks like this. Okay, so here's the magic of prep already. All right. So I have done machine piecing, and it's dot to dot sewing here, which means that I backstitched at each of those dots. I put pins there, I lined the dot on the front with the dot on the back, and I did machine sewing each one of those seams. And so you can see these 3 haven't been finished up yet. They're right here ready to go, but this one I showed you that I have sewn it. Once you have the 4 pieces, each machine sewn or hand sewn, if that's what you're going to do, to your middle square. Then you take them, turn them over, and because of the smart way we press them, 1 pair out and 1 pair in, I'm going to fold these back. It's a miter. Okay, and this is very, very stretchy. This is bias, so don't handle this really rough. Just take it easy with this. And you're simply going to align these. I can feel that the underneath seam allowance is going up, and the one on top right here is going down. And I'm just going to put a pin in there to hold it. I'll do the same thing down here at this one. This one, the one on top is going up, and the one on the bottom is going down. And that's a good thing. I like those. And I'm going to put a pin there. And come on. Okay. And I pin in front of the intersections. And I also like to have an additional pin always when I'm sewing 2 pieces of fabric together. I put an additional pin at the bottom that keeps the outer edges aligned, and I put it so that as I'm sewing, I don't have to remove that pin. I have kept it well away from my foot is going to come right along here. That pin is still going to do its job all the way to the end. If you put the pin sideways like this, before you get to the most important part, which is the bottom edge, you have to remove the pin. And so I leave this in here just like that. I do dot to dot sewing. That's what I did on this one that's already sewn. Dot to dot sewing. That will allow you to put the seam allowances wherever they most want to go. This one I found that I really like my center square flat, but you may find that you prefer to have 2 of them come in and 2 of them go out. Some fabrics just tell you that's the way they want to go. Once I got done with this seam, I pressed it open. So you look at it when you get it done sewing, and this is what you're after. You really, in a perfect world, when everything aligns just right, there's no pucker here. If you have a pucker there, it's because you went 1 stitch too far. There is a perfect alignment here. This is 4 fabrics coming together. Here's 4 fabrics coming together, and that looks really good too, and that's great. If yours looks that great, super. Pat yourself on the back, say, yay, good job. But you know what? It doesn't matter, because once we get all done with all 4 of these seams, you are going to sew a petal on top. I'm going to hand applique these on top. You could prepare them and machine applique them, whichever method you prefer. But I think I like this petal. I'm going to stick this on here, and look what happens. All those beautiful intersections that I worked so hard to get right, nobody can see them because they're not there anymore. They're underneath the petal. So that's the good thing. Don't worry too much about whether this is perfect or not, because you're going to cover it up. All right. So that is how I came up with this particular method. And so I have this one just about done. Everything is done except my last petal has to go on there. And I left it off so you could see what I like to do. I like to hand applique, and I do like a drawn line. Not everybody does. You could just simply draw a line on the top side so you know where to turn it under. I made this little plastic template from the petal shape, and I always forget that this is L, shape L, and I wrote it on, put a sticky note here that tells me that's no seam allowance. So I just made it from this shape right here. And now I can lay it on top. If I wanted to draw a line on my petal, I would lay it here and draw around it with a pencil, mechanical pencil, on the top side. What I find works perfectly fine for me is that I can lay it right here on the actual quilt, and again, with a mechanical pencil, holding it really just right, I'm going to draw my pencil lines as to where I want to sew it. And then because the template has these dots on it. I use the dots on the template. Draw, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there are 6 dots here. And with my method, the dots don't absolutely align. This one lines up. This one doesn't line up with a spot because this is a different size from the original pattern. And again, like I showed with the crescent last time, for hand applique, I simply give this a finger press under at those dots so that I have them just where I know that they go. Good cotton fabric has a nice little, it'll remember where you want it to go for long enough for you to get it there. So I just fold this one over as I'm going, just finger press it. And now I'm ready to put it in place once I've drawn my line. And I put a few pins in here. And in the evening, when I'm sitting in the living room with my husband, pretending to watch television, I have something that I can hand stitch on and get this appliqued in place. So that's how I did my alternative block. And then there was, finally, and I'm just going to talk again about that trimming to perfection thing. Because we made our background extra large, once we get it done, it's time to trim it. And that's where that 8.5 inch square ruler comes in really handy. I've got the diagonal lines. I want to come across here. That's a 2-inch middle. And so I want to be able to have it so that with this ruler, there's a bullseye right there in the middle. So I want to get it aligned as much as I can. I want these diagonals to come down here. I want, if I did it just right, I've got the, let's move it where you can see it. Okay. I was looking at it and said, oh yeah, that's really good. I want this 1/4 inch line, a 1/4 inch at the bottom of the ruler to be right there on the tip of the petal. Same thing on this side. And I fiddle around with it a little bit to make sure that I've got it right on all 4 corners before I pick up the rotary cutter and get it cut. So I've got these 2 are set down here at the bottom. And let's look and see how the top looks. And you've got your diagonal lines to go by. Top looks pretty good. And I can give myself a little tiny extra fabric is always better than hitting it right on the mark. So I can move this one down just a bit. Just up. And I do fiddle with this to make sure that it's right before I cut it. You could always use a light chalk pencil on the outside too to see, or a mechanical pencil if you wanted to check to make sure that it was the right size. But that's how I get this trim to be exactly 8.5. And on the back, this one looks like this. Here's when I press this center differently. I press this into the middle. I'm pretty sure that when the one that I just showed you, I'm going to go in the, no, this one I did into the middle too. So anyway, okay, so that shows you what I wanted to show you about this alternative block should you want to try something that's faster. So let's go back to the webcam, and I'll mention something that I mentioned in the blog. Behind me is mine, and this center is sewn together right now. Now, that's not part of Jen's instructions. She doesn't have us do any assembly until month 12. But once I got my blocks done enough for the middle, there are, of course, in month 1, we made the star. In month 2, we made block 1. And today, we're making block 2. For the entire quilt, there are 20 of block 2 and there are 20 of block 1. But the middle only needs 6 of each, along with the center star. So once I got enough of those done, I wanted to go ahead and put them in there. In that, my quilt that you see behind me, I have 2 of my blocks in there. And I have 4 of the original, the curved blocks in that middle. And I think you have to really look for it to see which is which. I don't think it's distracting, and the time saved for me was worth it. So I am making more of these, as well as more of the curved ones, because there are a total, as I said, of 20 of block 2 and in the whole quilt, and there are 20 of block 1 in the entire quilt. So having said that, some people are feeling like they have to rush and rush and rush and get each month they have to do everything for the month. And I'm here to tell you, you don't. There are 20 of this block 2 and make them over time. There were 20 of block 1. You don't have to have them all done before you can start block 2. It's a way to have different things, different segments of the project that you can work on as you go. So, and each one has a little something different to offer to you. Sometimes you want a hand sew, sometimes you want a machine piece, and you can decide which one works best for your time today. So you could also, I tried to find a completely separate block, something completely different, and I just didn't find anything that I liked well enough. Having these petals that go to the outside edge work really well because of the block one that has that improved 9-patch that has the curvy pieces that come to the outside edge. But if you want something completely different, and I know Helen W. has found a completely different block that she's using for her block 2. She is not making this block at all. She's got a different block in there. It's your quilt. You get to decide. If you want to do something completely different, go right ahead. So what's coming next is that we're going to start working on the log cabin blocks, and there are 20 of those. If you are working with the kit fabrics, do not cut in advance. I'm going to give you important instructions for how best to cut the kit neutrals for your log cabin blocks. We are using those same neutrals for the background rectangles for the fan blocks. And last month we covered the fan blocks for the outside border. I put up an additional video that's 28 minutes long that covers everything on how you can paper piece and then actually make the fan blocks, whether you want to do doubles or singles. And I've got that got loaded right after we finished up the original, the live. I did another video a day later. So that's there. And also the most important thing I'm happy to tell you is that we also provided that L shape, the background for the fan block. If you don't have the templates yet, you'll have the pattern available. We put that in month 2 as well. The templates are coming. If you pre-ordered them, you will have them fairly quickly. And so, but you do have that shape now. So your fan block shapes are complete. The little handle, the fan blade, and the background piece that goes around the outside edge. And you can find that again, as I said, in month 2. I didn't want you to have to wait until November when it was scheduled to be put out into the pattern. I said, no, let's get that out there right now. So we made that work. I do look for your questions, as I said, on the forum. I will look here when I get a chance, remembering that I'm in California today on March the 1st, and I'll be there for this entire next week. So next month, we'll do log cabins, and we'll get started on those, which I found really fun to do, and they teach you some good things, too. So anyway, until next time, that's a wrap.